Fallout series from Prime became a giant success to say it mildly, and this makes me very sad. Many people praise it, and there are some things to be praised for, but the situation reminds me of the Fallout 3's one, and today I'm going to tell you why this show was in fact a bad Fallout, and why it buries any hopes for the future of the franchise. To truly understand why the Amazon's adaptation is a bad Fallout, we need to touch upon the good old Bethesda doesn't understand Fallout topic and pin what a true Fallout is all about.
That's what I would do. Take it. Damn!
So, back to the beginning. We have two almost completely opposite in their tone classic Fallouts, which, however, are tied by one simple thread: progress. War never changes, but people still will try to advance in order to slaughter each other more effectively. In Fallout 1 we can see it in the small settlements, which are slowly recovering after the nuclear holocaust and are stepping on each other's throats in the process. In Fallout 2, humanity became a little fatter, which inevitably led to even more violence. I also like how they implemented another theme of how utopian the will of unifying mankind is. The Master's plan is, to be honest, not ideal, costs too many lives and is doomed in its core. In the second game, the delusional dream of uniting humans is manifested in the will of offing anybody with a different genome, and all of that sounds painfully familiar. Those themes stay consistent and humanity always rolls forward. In the first game, people came up with bottle caps as currency. In the second one, it was replaced by some regular-ass dollars because it makes sense. And even the reused concepts are always modified. If Black Isles used a highly secretive sect of people who touch themselves when they see a Japanese toilet in the first game, mostly because of the constant crunches in the subsequent one, they might reuse them in a different location, but flesh them out minimally in order to leave some spotlight for the newer fractions. Same thing with mutants, same thing with anything else that was reused. I can say that the transition from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2 was flawless. The original devs left Black Isles and founded Troika Games. Chris Avellone, who in pair with Fergus Urquhart more or less curated Fallout 2 and would have been the main guy on the cancelled Van Buren, said that without Tim Kaine as a producer, they didn't really have someone to hold them in clear ramifications, so the change in tone was pretty drastic. A great example of that is when you go out of a brothel with Marcus. He remarks that it only takes a few years to get the juices flowing again, undermining the main breach in the Master's plan. Or the fact that Enclave should have been a much more serious organization akin to the Master and his entourage. Yet here is one of the most brutal Enclavees proposes to grab a bite after massacring a family. Seems pretty realistic to me, tender giant, all of that stuff, but whatever. However, the bright side of that, the new faces in the development team respected the source. Chris Avellone has even written the Fallout Bible, which was created in consultancy with the original devs and encompassed everything that the original Fallouts were. The more serious parts like New Reno, Myron or Sergeant Dornan, although being pretty far from the original tone, still made the lore of Fallout richer and more entertaining, to be honest.
Why hello there, beautiful. What can Myron do for you?
And the best thing, they apologized for their mistakes and retcons, which were not even that numerous actually. We wouldn't talk about Tactics or Brotherhood of Steel games that came afterwards. They were a giant mess. The devs stated that the games are not canon after they were released, although Bethesda kind of made Fallout Tactics canon. So yeah, Interplay weren't that good with their IP either. Fallout as an IP became less serious and changed hands by 2000s, but it still maintained its world-building logic and stayed in one theme. It doesn't matter what we have outside, people will still go forward and try to pull their intestines from each other in the process. War never changes. Hey, if you watched till here, I'd urge you to subscribe and leave a like, because you're already here. You might as well stay longer. And what can we see on the East Coast made by Bethesda? 116 years after the events of the first Fallout, to be clear, it's around the same amount of time between today and America's Civil War, the wasteland is in the same sorry-ass state as it was in the first game. The war, of course, never changes, but it doesn't mean that the main factions of the older games should literally clash over and over in different places and times. I admire that Bethesda at least made the events happen on the opposite side of the continent, but even so it contradicts the events from before really hard without really adding anything. The whole infinite super mutants thing, the Jet retcon, the power armor one as well, the list goes on and on. In my opinion, it's because Bethesda is here only for decorations and nothing else. They are masters at creating engaging sandboxes, but the mind gymnastics of creating something really unique and engaging needs to be done by someone else. The whole Kirkbride situation, gradual stagnation of the Elder Scrolls, which I'll cover in this video, right up a link, and the flop of their freshly baked IP that they did themselves only proves my point. All of that is only amplified by Emil. And I know that it's trendy to shit on him, and I don't think that the guy is the main problem. He managed to create Oblivion's Dark Brotherhood questline, props to him, yet a creator is most of the time as good as his last creation, especially in the field of video games. And to be honest, the last games curated by Emil were pretty bad, so the whole keep it simple stupid doesn't really work in the favor of the games, to say it mildly. Here is, for example, Emil's take on Fallout Bible, which one more time encompasses the docs with background materials for almost everything made by the OG Fallout creators.
Bible mentioned earlier by email, would the Bible be considered a canon property or a non-canon one?
Great question. So there's actually different versions of the Bible too. And a lot of the stuff from the Bible is up on public on the Fallout Wikia online, and you can look at that stuff. For us, canon always starts with what is in the games. And so it's what is in Fallout 1, Fallout 2, even some like Fallout Tactics is there's some stuff from canon from Fallout Tactics as well in our Fallout games.
It might seem like a very balanced answer and as if they care about the lore, yet here is what Todd Howard told the audience in 2007. For our purposes, neither Fallout Tactics nor Fallout Brotherhood of Steel happened. So, yep, they just don't care. Even within the lore established inside of one game, they contradict each other, where in Fallout 4, a top secret armor is on a full display inside of a theme park. It's my personal opinion, but I don't think that Emil discarded Fallout Bible because it might have not been completely attuned to the older games, but because people at Bethesda don't give a slightest fuck. Most of the retcons they've created are there not because they make the world more entertaining or deep like it was in Fallout 2, but because they were too lazy to research. They don't really value your previous gaming experience, they just make cool sandboxes to be sold. I think that the Nuka World DLC really shows how Bethesda sees Fallout, as a fun, frozen-in-time, post-apocalyptic roller coaster. I really like a comment I saw under some New Vegas video where a guy wrote, Bethesda created 100 flavors for Nuka Cola. Obsidian created Sunset Sarsaparilla. Really sums the thing up. And they could have just get around all of the old geezers' backlash by doing a little more research and staying on the east coast of America, but no. After all of that, they dropped the Fallout Prime trailer, which happens to be on the west coast. I had some hopes because the show had to be written by some new writers, yet here is how you can see that the hand of Bethesda was in it. Fallout 3's plot, you need to find your father. Fallout 4's one, you need to find your child who becomes a father figure literally named Father. Fallout series, main hero needs to find her father. Todd Emil, I'm deeply sorry, but come on. The show itself is written by a guy with an okay portfolio and a woman who wrote the script for Tomb Raider Reboot, which was meh, and took a part at writing for Captain Marvel. She also worked on newer D&D somehow, so when I found out about it, I was completely ready for another women-empowering great show. Woohoo! To be completely honest, the show wasn't even that bad, but mostly because of the visuals. It certainly is an eye candy, there are lots of fan service and other superficial Fallout traits. If you only played the Bethesda Fallouts, you'd most likely be satisfied or even delighted by the product. Yet if we dig a little deeper and look at the show from an old fan's standpoint, the amount of retcons is overwhelming, especially considering the location of the show. Change in tone is significant and story quality overall is lacking, to say it mildly. Let's go about each of the following. The retcons. The first thing that strikes the eye is the cool retcon. It's an old song actually beginning with Fallout 2 where the Coffin Willie was buried in a grave for a few months, thus undermining the necropolis's water chip dilemma, where ghouls did die without water in few days like actual humans, where the Coffin Willie laid there for 2 months. Chris Avallone, who wrote that himself, admitted that it was not the smartest decision to implement that, and here is his take on the whole thing. I wouldn't use anything from Coffin Willie to do the deep dive into ghoul physiology any more than trying to use luck special events to define the real franchise lore. For example, I'd argue he had air holes, went dormant, ate worms, possibly once trying to hit him, etc, etc. Yet Bethesda seems to hang on to even the most absurd ideas, so now we have a 200 years old kid ghoul in a refrigerator, and this guy being dug out of the grave once a year for around 30 years to lose a few inches of his skin. Does it make sense to use a pretty big amount of valuable drugs in order to torture your fool once a year? Probably not. Does it look cool to see a literal ghoul walking out of a grave? Absolutely. Yet, was this moment worth to undermine the whole necropolis drama once again, as well as the survival of Basement Ghoul and Come Fly With Me New Vegas Quest and many other ghoul-related ones? I don't think so.
I'm not delicate. Rad roach meat for protein, condensation off the pipes for water, and I do my business over in the far corner. I wouldn't say it's been comfy.
Another giant thing is the new drug that can reverse the feralization. There was a talk about creating a medication that could have prevented going feral in the previous games, yet in no game it was made possible. And you might think that this drug was created after the second battle for Hoover Dam, yet here we have this scene.
28 years since I first started showing.
Not as long as you, though. How long since you first started wastelanding?
A long time.
It's a lot of vials.
Meaning that this drug was on the market of the West Coast even before New Vegas' events. And considering that even such a bum could have afforded it, I think it was pretty accessible. Why there was no such drugs in the Mojave, especially having ghouls in the NCR's army and having this drug inside of the country itself? No idea. Just another very clumsy retcon. Why was it implemented? Who knows? We will see in the next season most likely. I don't really have problems with the drug that turns people into ghouls almost instantly. Hancock mentioned that for example, and it seems like a plausible idea. Yet I still can understand if the anti-fertilization drug and the one that the mustache douchebag takes are the same ones or not, and I do have problems with the fact that it makes ghouls into super soldiers. In combination with not needing any sustenance, it really breaks the established lore on so many levels that I don't even really want to talk about it. Ghouls just turned from decaying smelling zombies whose only pause were their radiation resistance and really long aging into fucking immortal Deadpool-like superheroes for the sake of we will see in the next season apparently. The depiction of Brotherhood of Steel is also questionable. Since when the isolationists like them began to conquer? Since when they take outsiders in so easily? Since when the squires don't know what their really is for, if procreation was the driving force behind the steady population and recruitment inside of the Brotherhood? I mean, why did they introduce Enclave once again, considering it was wiped out like twice already? The cold fusion is another thing that bugs me a little. It was part of GAC, which was already established in the lore, so presenting it as this unique MacGuffin was a really strange decision. Not to mention that the hot fusion, used in microfusion cells, is already part of the world, and they, according to physics, produce much more energy than the cold fusion would have produced in theory, so there is that as well. Next thing is the location of the worlds. The worlds 31, 32 and 33 are located near the Santa Monica Pier. How the hell didn't Master find the vault in 100 miles proximity, but in a bad scenario would have eventually found Vault 13, which is 1000 miles away, is beyond me. Another retcon is the passage of time and destruction of NCR. And here is a part of interview with the guy who wrote most of the show.
The idea is that this world takes place many years after the events of Fallout 1 in the same spot. What we wanted to make sure is to not imply that nothing has happened in that time. A whole lot has happened, and the world of factions and the conflicts that we saw in those original games has been ongoing, and that you can be on top for a while, but not forever in this world.
Well, it seems like there was another massive fucking atom showering besides Shady Sands happening in those 15 years, because that's how western side of Hoover Dam was described in Vegas. NCR became the largest known post-war country, with a total population number above 700,000, excluding transients and people without citizenship. 40 years before the events of Fallout New Vegas, need to emphasize, because afterwards they became even cooler. The Republic in 2281, on the eve of the Second Battle for Hoover Dam, is one of the mightiest nations that emerge out of the ashes of the United States. Cultural and economic transformations of the past 40 years resulted in the re-emergence of wage labor, luxury industries, journalism, and more. Survival is no longer the rule for a Republic citizen. And that's what we see now. I do understand that the second battle for Hoover Dam wasn't successful and they had to retreat, but here is what a map of NCR looks like. In New Vegas it was pretty much obvious, although being thinly scattered all over the region, that they had some significant power and resources behind them. And even if they were completely annihilated, where is all of their renovated infrastructure, new agriculture, if there was only one bomb? You think that the people seeing NCR back down wouldn't have occupied all of those places and tried to establish smaller ones like Roya or something like that? Yet we see people still live in some fucking wreckages of 200 years old metal scrappings. And what the fuck is this? How does this guy sustain himself? Is this Borderlands or something? It's just so deficient and illogical, yet it serves the purpose of Fallout being a stagnant post-apocalyptic sandbox, so fuck the logic and lore, I guess. And finally, the nuking of Shady Sands itself. I mean, it's not the worst idea, to be honest. The OGs behind Fallout have themselves stated that the NCR is destined to collapse. Yet it's not the fact that they destroyed it, but this behind-the-scene implementation of that angers me. It's just uninspired and bad. The author-writers and eventually Obsidian have given the NCR its due, making it into a giant, multifaceted and very powerful fraction. And seeing it destroyed within a few years without a trace is just bad and sad. My schizo theory is that destroying NCR was a part of the bigger plan. Bethesda never took Fallout seriously. We can see it in Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Communications as well as the head of publishing at Bethesda Softwork Pete Heinz's tweets. If you are going to complain to anyone at Bethesda on Twitter, don't bother. We do not care about what you think on our decisions on writing or removal of skills or universe retcons in Fallout. We make our games accessible to as many people as possible, including women. Why did he need to state that? And that's what makes sense. Or the beautiful, and now I'm playing other stuff where there is dialogue and I'm thinking, oh, I wish I could have just walked away because I don't have the attention span for long dialogue. Yep, this guy represented Bethesda for the longest time. The amount of hands-down incompetence is just staggering. They were, however, kind enough to give Fallout to the original creators and allow them to create a game under pretty inhumane circumstances. Yet, even with all of that, they provided a much better Fallout, which was a great sandbox as well. And after that, Bethesda, out of envy I presume, pierced their claws into the franchise like Gollum into his precious. In my opinion, this series was a way to connect both Fallouts, destroy everything that was established by the predecessor, and just roll with the good old City of Kids level Fallout on. Do you really think that the desk mistake was made on purpose? If so, to what cause does it serve? Even if the bombing was after 2277, why would they put it as the down of NCR, when in New Vegas it was stated that the NCR was more or less on a high horse? I can tell you why. Because they don't give a fuck. They never did. And okay, I get it. They just want their own private retrofuturism theme park without anybody touching the precious, and they try to have no division between Fallouts. But the last thing that I wanted to see was the blatant propaganda and the change of the main theme. As far as propaganda goes, there is of course a pregnant woman shooting from minigun, lots of girl bosses here and there, with the main protagonist being a Mary Sue one, a transgender strong man, and all of the other stuff the modern audience allegedly loves so much. Yet it didn't really bother me. By today's standard, the DEI aspect of the show is pretty moderate, to be honest. What really bothered me is the fact that there is the anti-capitalism stuff that became the center of things. Not to forget that the OG games were made by people who were growing up after the Cold War, so the inherent criticism of big corporations and the stupidity war was also in the older games, but in a little more subtle form, and it was never in the center. Now the world tech is the main evil, the Chinese were never mentioned because reasons, and this just completely destroys the tone of the Fallout. It is not what Fallout was all about. And how do I know that it wasn't about that? Chris Avallone asked Team Kane personally. And that's why it's a bad Fallout. Lack of care, surface level connections to the source, lack of logic, and the swap of the main theme to push a certain ideology. As to why it is a mid-show, here are just some examples. It is very inconsistent in tone and overall quality. Here we have a scene in the supermarket where we without words can delve into the soul of Cooper, see his regrets and open him a little more. And here is this scene.
Bear on my back and you're standing there, you stupid motherfucker, you know this is all your fault. You know what they do to squires that don't do their fucking job? They hang ya. They gotta be the worst fucking squire there is. This is all your fault. You dumb motherfucker, you. You don't deserve that armor.
Where we as viewers are seen as stupid and reminded a few times that this was a morally good decision to off this guy. And how did the man who would try to badmouth and threaten the only one who would help him in a death or life situation got to the status of a knight is another question, but I digress. And this show is just infested with such things. Lack of stakes also make the show less engaging. From Moldava not killing those guys in the vault, although the character was shown pretty ruthless before, which kinda renders her less of a threat, to not only the ghoul surviving some, but Miss Pernell reacting to having her finger bitten off like that. I mean, have you ever had a big splinter under your nail? The girl who just walked outside of a very comfy vault wouldn't have reacted to losing her finger like that, and I can guarantee that. And there is a lot of other stuff like that. The acting, however, was more or less on the level. Walton Goggins drags the whole show on his shoulders. Ella Pernell is pretty good as well. It deserves a praise that she even tried to dive deep into Fallout before playing the role, as any good actor should. Yet she played the fourth one, and I can't blame her. Playing the isometric ones, especially for the people who never played games, would be torture. Yet Fallout 4 is not the best Fallout representative, to say it mildly, and with the script she was given, it was a pretty solid job made by her. Aaron Moten, who played Maximus, or whatever his real name was a weaker link in my opinion. But it's more connected to the fact that his character is pretty badly written, to be honest. The other cast was okay as well. All in all, there were some bright spots. The past of the ghoul, although it makes no sense to have a name the ghoul because there are a lot of ghouls in the universe, yet his past was pretty fascinating. I like some parallels to the games, with brother of the protagonist shown as a typical intelligence build. I like how squires are shown as followers carrying your stuff. Don't know if it's intentional though. The fan service was also pretty sweet, though not always logical, like the mentioning of the dead water chip, which doesn't lead anywhere. And don't get me wrong, I don't relish in shitting on everything and being a grumpy fart who can't enjoy anything. I just want to be respected as a consumer and a die-hard fan. Why even create something in a franchise if not for the fans? But I do understand that I'm in a minority, and now the OG Fallout fans are considered those who at least played Fallout 3. I mean, I do wholeheartedly think that Fallout could have worked with Bethesda's formulas together, even without the violated lore and with having a deep and complex story. New Vegas showed it 100%. But now everything established was ironically nuked, and we will have a good old Bethesda Fallout going strong. I like how the director of New Vegas, Josh Sawyer, is distancing himself from all of that crap and just states, "I don't feel like it's healthy for me to be really invested into something I have no control over, frankly." A very stoic attitude we all better adopt. Yet, I do still think that we need to stay vocal and share our opinions, and maybe one day something like Fallout New Vegas will be born again. If you want to hear me whine about Bethesda a little more, you can check the video at the end of this one. Thank you guys for staying till here. If you enjoyed the vid, I'd urge you one more time to leave a like and subscribe, share your opinion on the show in the comments, and stay tuned because there is much more to come. I love you. Have a good one.